Spain 1, Argentina 0. Despite the scoreline, this was probably one of the most dominant displays we may yet see in a World Cup final, and yet one of the least interesting finals in recent memory. Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel, and now that the World Cup 2026 has found its victor, let's examine the match and what it means for international football going forward. Before that though, sorry if I sound a bit off. I need to wake up in less than 3 hours. I'm traveling tomorrow, and that's on top of me already feeling under the weather. But let's get into the match, and obviously we didn't get any goals in the first 90 minutes, even though Lamine Yamal had a good chance like 4 minutes in, but the scoreline, it obscures the dominance that Spain had on the ball. Depending on who you ask, Argentina had their first shot not even on target in either the 117th minute or the 122nd. I'd lean towards the latter since the earlier shot didn't go anywhere. Not that much earlier, but you know what I mean. On the other hand, you might ask, well, why couldn't Spain put us out of our misery and score within the first 90 minutes? Well, Archie Corbett goes into greater detail about this over on the ACFC channel, but in essence, because Spain commits so many players to the defensive midfield and to the back line, when they try to go forward, there's just not enough offensive midfield support, and Lamine Yamal ends up making a cross to absolutely no one in the box, or the shot is so weak that Emi Martinez just easily saves it. You really need a moment of magic or a massive lapse in concentration from the opponent to really do anything. Spain's also not really much of a rapid counter-attacking side either, so the things that allowed Cape Verde and Egypt to put 2 goals past Argentina just aren't present with this side. But to their credit, Argentina defended quite well, and Emi Martinez made like 11 saves in this match, which, fun fact, is more saves than Unai Simon's entire tournament. But that's all I have to say positively about Argentina in this match, because let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is that Argentina has definitely gotten a number of favorable calls and also just a lack of calls in general. Many people will understandably bring up the Egypt match, but even in this match against Spain, there were some pretty egregious calls either made or not made, like the disallowed goal from Nico Williams where Otamendi goes down in the build-up while holding the wrong leg. But the ref, Slavko Vincic, wasn't going to let everything slide. I don't know how Enzo Fernandez genuinely tried to argue with him that sending Kubarsi into, and I quote, American airspace, as Neuron said in his video, how it wasn't an offense worthy of a card. Arguably, it could have even been a straight red, but the outcome was the same anyway, and millions of Englishmen wept tears of joy after Enzo Fernandez got sent off. Offensively, as we already alluded to, Argentina just generated next to nothing, and Scaloni did nothing to remedy this. Obviously, Messi was already basically locked out of the game for the vast majority of it, but, Lautaro Martinez, he scored in both of their last 2 matches, and yet he didn't play a single second in this one, so some blame has to go to Scaloni on this. But in the end, you have to give credit to the entire Spanish national team for this. Spain has been described as the national team at this World Cup that looks the most like a club team, as in they're an incredibly well-coached and well-trained team. Everyone knows their place, everyone knows their role and position, and at the end of the day, all of that falls onto Luis de la Fuente, the Spanish manager. He's quite interesting as managers go, because before taking on the job of the Spanish national team, he's coached the U19, the U21, and U23 Spanish sides. And you know what that means? It means he's able to monitor and hone in on young talent coming through the ranks and implement them in his national team. He won the U21 Euros and the U19 UEFA Championship with these respective sides, and this World Cup just marks his 3rd trophy with this side after also coming out victorious in the Nations League and the Euros. But we do have to talk about the winning goal scored by Ferran Torres. Now, I'm not playing the video again because I don't want to get DMCA'd, but it's a long ball over the top played by Pedro Porro. Nico Williams manages to keep it in play, and it falls perfectly to Ferran Torres, who bangs it to the back of the net out of reach of any of the defenders. Now, 2 things can be true at once. One, this is an incredible opportunity for a player who's been so plagued with things like underperforming. And two, after the World Cup, he wore a Make Spain Great Again red cap and started following a sports journalist who tweeted a photo of Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams and said something to the effect of, "Why are they on this team?" I'm not saying that he's an outright racist, but, he's probably not someone you should look up to as a moral influence in any case. A few minutes later, Ferran Torres gets another one, but is ruled offside. Near the end, Argentina does their, at this point, signature move of suddenly waking up and popping off, but Spain is not a side that gets intimidated by such behavior, and the Argentines still struggle to find much joy. I think Kubarsi makes a ridiculous laser-sharp clearance that could very easily have been an own goal. Simeone skied his one chance, and that's all she wrote. I think everyone minus the Argentines would have liked to see the match end in 90 minutes, maybe even some Argentines to be fair, but like I mentioned, Spain commits so many bodies in the defense that it's usually hard for them to outnumber the opposition in the offense. But committing so many bodies to the defense also means that Spain are by some distance the best defensive team at this World Cup. And you know what they say, defense wins championships. But it's not your typical Arsenal haram ball or anything. Their defense at its core is just to have the ball and to keep it for as long as possible and slowing down the tempo of the game before going forward and looking for options to attack. It's not low block or anything like that. It's defensive football, but it's incredibly fluid, especially in terms of where the players go or have to go. Oftentimes you've got Alex Baena and Lamine Yamal further up the field than Oyarzabal, for example, and that's their striker. Obviously, Rodri is able to drop back as well, and it's this fluidity in defense and the relentlessness of getting the ball back in possession that really frustrates opponents. Spain are essentially forcing everyone else to play the way they want to play. So, what does this mean for Spain, Argentina, and football in general going forward? Well, let's start with Spain. This is the start of a new dynasty, the second Spanish dynasty of the 21st century, and not just because they're the first team to win multiple World Cups in the 2000s. As I mentioned earlier, De La Fuente has won the Nations League and Euros with this batch of players already. Who's to say they can't go for another Euros? I could go over every single player that was on the pitch. I won't, but obviously Rodri is just an unbelievable defensive midfielder, possibly the best one in the world right now. Kubarsi and Laporte are really solid at the back, and to think that this isn't even the Spanish national team's final form. Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams are still playing at maybe 75% since they're both coming off of injury. People also put Fermin Lopez in that discussion. So if all of these guys, all of these relatively young guys are healthy and up and running in 2 years, they are absolutely the side to beat for the Euros and very likely even the World Cup in 2030, which, might I remind you, is being co-hosted by Spain. And all of this is before we even mention women's football, where they are equally as successful, if not more so. Spain is currently the first and only country to have held the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup trophy at the same time. On the women's side, a lot of that is down to Aitana Bonmatí, who's a 3-time Women's Ballon d'Or winner and of course attended this final as well. She acted as one of the interviewers for some of the Spanish men's national team players. A couple of them, like Kubarsi, got photos with her, and Rodri said in an interview that he aspires to reach the level as a footballer that Bonmatí has reached. They have other footballing legends as well, like Alexia Putellas, but yeah, the Spanish women's national team is incredibly successful as well, and if it weren't for losing in a penalty shootout to England, they also would have had a trophy for the World Cup, the Nations League, and the Euros all at once. Clearly, they're doing something right in Spain, and this even permeates through the club level, looking at the big two in Spain, obviously, and also the managers they produce, like Luis Enrique for the PSG. There's just no telling when this dynasty might end, and it's very, very bright days ahead for Spain for sure. The same cannot be said, however, for Argentina. They kind of fell upwards into the World Cup final, and as soon as they met a side that they couldn't just rage bait into losing concentration, they were the ones getting rage baited and getting cards. Like I mentioned earlier, Otamendi falling over and clutching the wrong leg, some other player literally just bumping into Cucurella for no reason, and of course Paredes just beating up Spanish players and pushing them over once the match had ended. But even then, Emi Martinez's saves and FIFA favoritism, try saying that 5 times fast, it can only take you so far. I was frankly surprised that Argentina got a single card in this match, but Slavko Vincic actually made some proper calls. But Argentinians complaining about refs is, first of all, insanely hypocritical, considering their entire strategy is to push the boundaries of what's permitted, but also that would only be relevant if you try to play. The amount of times Argentina lost the ball to Spain was incredible, and eventually their frustration and their lack of ball possession got to their head, and they just showed very little fight. Messi got locked out of the match, Julian Alvarez couldn't do much, and to me this is a sign of things to come for the Argentine national team. Now, I don't know who started saying this, but a line has spread across Twitter where people are basically saying that Argentina without Messi is Paraguay, and that's not far off from the truth. We've already visibly seen the impact that the loss of Di Maria has had on the squad, and seeing just how much of a playmaker Messi was in this tournament, be it scoring goals or making important crosses from the corner, it's just really hard to see where Argentina goes from here. I think the latest news is that Messi might stay on for another few months, but that would entail him not participating in Copa America, much less the 2030 World Cup, and a lot of the other guys on the squad are aging out as well, like Tagliafico, like Rodrigo de Paul, and hell, even Emi Martinez himself. It's just difficult to imagine Argentina retaining their dominant status after the departure of Messi. This really does mark the end of a dynasty for Argentina and for South America more broadly. I mean, look at Brazil, more down bad than they seemingly ever have been. And on the other side of that argument, Europe is really further strengthening its dominance over world football. The success of Norway and Switzerland this year especially, in addition to the traditional powerhouses like France, England, and Spain, and in the middle of all of this is Africa. CAF has really quietly made a name for themselves as the second best confederation overall, ahead of South America. I mean, 90% of their teams in the knockout round, that's no joke. Even putting aside Morocco, you've still got teams like Senegal, Ivory Coast, Egypt, my beloved Cape Verde, who can go toe-to-toe with the best in the world, and I think that's just going to continue in 2030, and if you want some African football action right now, might I suggest checking out the Women's AFCON. You've got some great matches there as well. But yeah, that's it for this video. The end of one dynasty marks the beginning of another one. Hope my voice didn't sound too bad in the video, but more importantly, I hope you enjoyed. Like this video if you did, follow me on all of my socials, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my upcoming international football content, and I'll see you next time.